We will begin with a prayer and the lighting of the ceremonial lamp. The prayer will be led by Mrs. Shurmila Bose, Joint Secretary, UWAC, and the dignitaries on the dais will light the lamp to declare the program open. The badges. Sangachatam Sambhudatam Sambhumanam Si Janatam Sangachatam Sambhumanam Si Janatam Samanu Mantra Samiti Samanam Mana Sahachita Mesham Sangachatam Sambhadatam Sambhumanam Janatam. May I now invite Mr. Shomita Roy, President, UWAC, to give the welcome address. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of University Women's Association of Calcutta, I welcome respectfully revered Swami Subarnanandaji, Secretary Maharaj of Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture. I welcome Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, IFUA President, and past IFUA President, Inaki Chattopadhyay. She was IFUA President in the year 2008 and 11. We heartily welcome the President of UWA's Bangalore, Mrs. Bechu Banerjee, and also President of UWA Chidambaram, Dr. S. Pungoti, President of UWA Madras, Dr. Latha Rajendran, President of UWA Nagpur, Dr. Nandita Satra. We welcome all the conveners, officiating membership, Dichama Banerjee, Project Convener, Malati Kalmari, Convener Resolution, Maithili Sundar, Communications Convener, Purabhi Ghosh Mohan, Vice President, UW Asia, Dr. Meera Bondre, and all other visiting delegates. We also welcome all the heirs present here. We welcome the IFUA office bearers, Gomati Venkateshwar, Vice President, Coordinator International Relations, Shamusri Sen, Shakuntala Ghoshasra, Secretary, Srimoi Ganguly, she is not present here, Treasurer, Shangamitra Dattagupta, Joint Treasurer. We welcome the panelists. I think only we find here Dr. Mamata Shati Bhattacharya. Mamata Roy Chaudhary is yet to come, and Dr. Razina Ahmed is also yet to come. I welcome all University Women's Association of Calcutta's members present here today. I think, let me just wait. Anyway, we are indeed honored to have the precious presence of you all at the auspicious Turyananda Hall. We begin the day by paying our tribute and remembering the strong message of Vivekananda that it is our duty to encourage all those doing good so that they can make their dreams come true. I think Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee has just arrived, so just waiting for him to come. I think Maharaj, Shupanananda Maharaj is in a hurry. He has to go somewhere else. So we will continue with your program. Hope Rudrangshu Mukherjee, when he arrives, he will join us here at the top table. So now let us hope that you all have an enlightening and engrossing session with lot of take-home messages. Now, we will begin. We are indeed extremely grateful to all our dignitaries who are gracing this occasion, and as an expression of our appreciation, we would like to felicitate them. So we have over here the revered Shami Shuparnanandaji, felicitated by President Shumita Roy. Next, we will felicitate Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, President, IFUWA. Shumita D will felicitate her, President of UWAC. Now, I will request Shumita D to felicitate Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, Chancellor, Ashoka University. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee. Shumita D will now felicitate past President of IFUWA, I'm extremely sorry, Srimati Inaki Chattopadhyay. Thank you, Shumita Di. Thank you, Srimati Shormila Bose. It is my honor to invite Shami Shuparnanandaji to make his inaugural address.
respected mothers and sisters, Professor Sudhanshu Mukherjee, so this is a very important program that you are going to observe here at the Institute by you means members and office bearers of Indian Federation of University Women as Women's Association and its Calcutta chapter, University Women's Association, Calcutta. I welcome you heartily to this institute, and it is good in a way that all of you have formed a forum 100 years ago. This is really astounding in a way. I pray for the happy ending of this program. As university professors, you are blessed with the required knowledge of what you want to do for the regeneration of women. Yours is a welfare organization, I know, for spreading education, health, hygiene among women only. You have enough ideas, I know, but I want you to remember some of the Swamiji's utterances. On the women's development and empowerment idea. He wrote a letter to his Guru Bhai, brother disciple, Swami Shivanandaji Mahaprabhu Maharaj, in 1894 from USA. You have not yet understand the wonderful significance of mother's life. Mothers mean Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi. None of you. But gradually you will know. Till now you have not understood her. Gradually you will know how he would help you know. Without Shakti or power, there is no regeneration for the world. Why is it that our country is the weakest and the most backward of all countries? Because Shakti is held in dishonor here. Mother has been born, mother means Holy Mother Sarada Devi. She has been born to revive that wonderful Shakti in India and making her the nucleus. Once more will Gargis and Maitris be born into this world. So we have mothers of all areas, but this has been lacking. Emergence of Gargis and Maitris. We just saw them in the forest several thousand years ago. And since then, their path to become Gargis and Maitris has been sealed by the renowned prophets, I can say. Sampradaya did it for the first time, and nobody cared after that to revive that special role of women in society. So Gargis and Maitris were banned by the religious leaders and preachers. And since then, no one tried to revive them. No one tried to install them in that majestic position. That's it. Dear brother, you understand little now, but by degrees you will come to know it all. Hence, it is her mot that I want first, not the Berul mot as such, a mot in the name of Sarada Devi, Sarada mot. It came into being, in 1954, other centenary. Any attempt, this is a direction that he has been giving us. Any attempt to modernize our women, if it tries to take out women away from the idea of Sita, is immediately a failure, as we see every day. Sita was not a nun or a Gandhi or a Maitri. She was a housewife. But what kind of housewife? Sita's idea has to be installed in our society. The women of India must grow and develop in the footprints of Sita, and that is the only way. He said it in his speech entitled Sages of India. He castigated people, his disciples and others, by saying, what have you made of your mothers? They are only respected, only remembered for begetting children. You have made them a manufacturing machine. That way he offhand language. There is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved. It is not possible for a bird to fly on only one wing. We can say a lot of things here. It is not possible for a bird to fly on only one wing. They are put at the backyard. In Christianity, in Islam, even in Hinduism, you see, so much of grandeur we see in the religious activities, religious buildings, temples, churches, but women's entry to these has been banned. Not a single scripture, even in Hindu philosophy, has been the product of women. So it is not possible for a bird to fly on only one wing, hence in Sri Ramakrishna incarnation, the acceptance of a woman as the Guru, Bhairavi Brahmani. Hence in practicing the woman's God and frame the mind just to get rid of sex idea. Hence my first endeavor is to start a mott for women. This mott shall be the origin of Gandhis and Maitris and women of even higher attainment than this. Then he wrote to Sarala Devi Chaudhurani, Rabindranath Tagore's niece, Janaki Ghosal's daughter, a renowned lady she was. And Swamiji wrote to her, if anyone like you go, England will be starved. Will there be no woman like you in the land of Maitri, Khana, Lilavati, Savitri, Ubhay Bharati, who will venture to create, to inundate the whole Western world. So it is good that you, of the rank of university professors, have had your own organization, and Swamiji exactly wanted this. Once on being asked, is widow remarriage good? He immediately reacted, why do you ask me this? Am I a woman? I only say, educate them and they will decide what is the best for them. Normally what I can say emphatically, Swamiji says, that the country's development does not depend on the number of husbands a woman has. This is a great aspect of truth. That way, he wanted to usher in a new era with the mothers coming up. Even to become Gargis, Maitris, Upanishads. And for that only Sarada Devi was born. And for that only Sri Ramakrishna instructed Sarada Devi to do his job. When you will be no more, you will have to continue my activities. Along with her, Sri Ramakrishna also gave power and also blessed Swami Vivekananda to do his meetings. So when you are going to observe this, your goal is to empower women, but by giving them education, giving them some assignments, this and that is good, no doubt. But Swamiji says that you have to empower them with spiritual acumen, spiritual realization. They also are quite fit to receive the highest truth, to realize the highest truth within. And we have wrongly put them aside, not allowing them to have that sort of experience. That is absolutely true, and it is good that you have taken it up squarely. The idea is, Swamiji's idea is that you have to have both production efficiency and character efficiency. With production efficiency, you will develop yourself into independent persons. But if along with that, you try to become like Gargis and Maitris, giving up everything for the knowledge absolute, for existence absolute, for bliss absolute. It's absolute means nothing. Nothing in your life would wait for something else. You become your own master or mistress, whatever you call. You become sole guide to yourself. That is most important. If you feel that you are all aged, yes, then try to see to it that your granddaughters, your daughters, they can pick up this issue. Because realization of the self or soul is not meant only for males. You are equally deficient. That is it. Real empowerment lies in there. So with these few observations, I take leave of you. Kindly excuse me. I have to go somewhere else right now. Hey, 1 second. Hearty welcome to you all. Thank you.
He has to leave, so we have the release of just one
Shani Subbanananda Maharaj has kindly agreed to release the newsletter. handed over by Shyamastri Sen, immediate past president, and also who has edited the entire volume. So a big round of applause for Shyamastri Sen. We are indeed grateful to Maharaj for his words of wisdom, inspiration, and encouragement. It is my pleasure now to invite Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, who is the President, IFUWA, and it is both a personal and a professional pleasure because she is in all senses my sister. So in this sorority, let's welcome Dr. Ranjana Banerjee.
Thank you, Rakhi. Revered Swami Supananandaji Maharaj, Secretary, Ramakrishna Mission, Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, Chancellor, Ashoka University, Inaki Chattopadhyay, past President of IUWA, Mrs. Shubita Roy, UWAC President, and my sisters and well-wishers from all the different UWAs who have assembled here. Good morning and a warm welcome to the 2 days event organized by UWAC. I'm happy to be a part of this August gathering and congratulate the empowered ladies for choosing a very relevant theme over the 2 days: Rebuild and Revitalize India, Empower the Women. Gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow is pivotal for achieving gender equality in the context of climate change, environment and disaster risk reduction, health concerns, and universal education, which are some of the greatest global challenges of the 21st century. The extent of empowerment of women in the national hierarchy is determined largely by 3 factors: her economic, social, and political identity and their weightage. These factors are deeply intertwined and interlinked with many cross-cutting linkages, which imply that if efforts in one dimension remains absent or weak, outcomes and momentum generated by the other components cannot be sustained, as they will not be able to weather any changes or upheavals. It is only when all the 3 factors are simultaneously addressed and made compatible with each other can the women be truly empowered. Therefore, for holistic empowerment of the women to happen, social, economic, and political aspects governing a woman's life is a must coverage for our society. A nation that has unfurled its wings and ready to take off, the role of gender participation comes to forefront and needs to be answered. Empowerment, the catchphrase of the 90s around the world, has evolved with time, space, and generations. So the question arises, what is gender empowerment today, and how well it has a space in this nation that we have envisioned? Is there a space for those who are in the margins, whose voices have remained silent against empowerment and yet to be heard? Have we moved away from victimhood and respected agency? Are we empowered citizens or just subjects of the nation and the state? The planning process has evolved over the years from purely welfare-oriented approach, where women were regarded as objects of charity, to the developmental programs and currently to their empowerment. It was only from the 6th 5-year plan that women secured a special niche and space in the national plans and planning progress, primarily with thrusts on health, education, and employment of women. A paradigm shift occurred in the 8th plan, where empowerment of women was recognized and accepted as a distinct strategy. year, United Nations has chosen their theme on International Women's Day 2023 as Digital, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality, in an effort to recognize and celebrate the women and girls who are championing the advancement of transformative technology and digital education, and to explore the impact of the digital gender gap on widening economic and social inequalities. Indian Federation of University Women's Associations attempts through its local, regional and global functioning to study the lacunae and the obstructive factors in achieving gender equality and embarks on activities concerning women's challenges and issues to ascertain women's dignified and empowered survival. IFUWA believes in striving justice in our lives, equality in our thoughts, and pride in our convictions. In this 21st century, an all-out effort must be implemented for women's visibility as potential national builders for rebuilding and revitalizing India. My best wishes remains with UWAC for organizing today's plenary session and a thought-provoking seminar which is to be followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, for raising crucial issues that are going to be extremely important in years to come for women, agency, and women's autonomy. And now it's my privilege to introduce Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, as well as invite him to deliver his keynote address. Professor Mukherjee is Professor of History and the Chancellor of Ashoka University, of which he was the founding Vice Chancellor. He taught history at the University of Calcutta and held visiting appointments at Princeton University, the University of Manchester, and the University of California, Santa Cruz. He was also editorial pages, The Telegraph. He studied at Calcutta Boys School, Presidency College, Kolkata, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and St. Edmund Hall, Oxford. He was awarded a DPhil in Modern History by the University of Oxford in 1981. An internationally acclaimed historian of the Revolt of 1857 in India, on which he has authored 5 books. He is also the editor of the Penguin Gandhi Reader. His most recent books are Nehru and Bose Parallel Lives, Twilight Falls on Liberalism, Jawaharlal Nehru, A Short Introduction. He is the general editor of a series on history and politics called The Hedgehog and the Fox, published by Permanent Flag and Ashoka University. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee.
Good morning, ladies and the soul gentlemen present. I'm deeply honored to be invited by the University Women's Association of Calcutta to deliver this keynote address. But I am a bit puzzled about why I was invited. I don't know what I have done to deserve this honor. For the simple reason that I think there are innumerable more eminent women, more eminent than myself, who could have delivered this keynote address and done a much better job than what I'm going to do. And I think it would have been more fitting if a woman had been delivering this keynote address rather than a man. But be that as it may, because I am a student of history, I'm going to approach the theme of the sessions that are to follow historically. And I'll attempt to do that by telling the story of 2 remarkable women who were involved in very tumultuous events in their lifetime. Their story is one of self-empowerment. Nobody, no agency, male, state, or any other external agency helped them to empower themselves. Whatever they did through their own merit, through their own skills, and through their own training. So I think they are examples that are important in our history and in our consciousness. There are also women who are slightly contrasting in the trajectories that their lives took. That will become very evident, and it will be one of the points that I'm going to touch upon, though it won't be the main point. One of them is practically forgotten, except for a handful of people. She is not remembered. And the other is remembered as a national icon. So there is this contrast of remembrance and forgetting, which I want to talk about a little bit also towards the end, because that also tells us something about the attitudes that males have towards certain kinds of women. Just to introduce my two protagonists, the national icon is Lakshmibai Rani of Jhansi, and the forgotten icon, I still consider her to be an icon, but forgotten icon is Begum Hazrat Mahal of Lucknow. The tumultuous events that they were caught up in, you have already guessed, is the revolt of 1857. In different ways, at different points of time, and in different geographies, they were drawn into this event. So I'll begin by briefly tracing how they came to be involved in these events, and then talk a little bit about their lives and their participation in the rebellion. On the 10th of May, in the afternoon, in the cantonment town of Meerut, the sepoys who were stationed there broke out into open mutiny, destroying every single building object that was associated with British rule in Meerut. And then they attacked the residences of the white people who lived in Meerut, administrators, officers, soldiers. They destroyed those bungalows and also killed every single white person, irrespective of gender and age, they could lay their hands on. Very few people escaped. Very few white men escaped. This was around 5:30 in the afternoon. As dusk fell, a group of sepoys did two very significant things. One is they cut off the telegraph wire that connected Meerut to Delhi, so that what was happening in Meerut could not be conveyed elsewhere. And 75 of them sped away on their horses to Delhi. They arrived in Delhi on the 11th, on the very early morning of the 11th of May. It was the month of Ramzan. The Mughal emperor, powerless Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah, Zafar, had just taken, the sun was still to rise, he had just said his morning prayer, and he has just taken his only meal of the day, when he noticed that from his private window of his private chamber, that across the Jamuna, it's an important geographical point to note those days, those of you who know Delhi, You actually cannot see the Yamuna now from the Red Fort, from the Lal Killa. But in those days, in 1857, the river ran just by the Lal Killa. In fact, in parts, the water of the Yamunas lapped against the walls of the Red Fort. He saw across the Yamuna smoke rising. Lal Killa was connected to the eastern bank of the Yamuna by a bridge made of boats. And on the eastern side, there was a toll collecting booth. That booth was on fire. So he asked his attendants to inquire immediately the cause of that fire. But before he could get a report, a group of sepoys, angry, agitated, had already arrived at the bottom of the balcony on which he was standing. And they appealed to the Badshah. Dohai Badshah, they said, we are coming from Meerut, where we have destroyed the Firangi, and we are trying to restore your Raj and our religion in Hindustan. So please become our leader and lead us in this struggle to throw out the Firangi from Hindustan. Bahadur Shah, since he had become the emperor, had never taken a decision in his life. Not that he didn't want to, he was not allowed to by the British. So he did what he always did when he had to take a decision. He summoned the British resident. He didn't immediately respond to this cry of help from the sepoys. He summoned the British resident, but before the British resident could arrive at the royal presence, the sepoys had entered the fort, Lal Killa, and they had entered the city of Shahjahanabad through various gates that hadn't been closed in time. And some of them actually rode into the private chamber of the emperor, Diwani Khas, as it was called. And they sat him down on a makeshift throne, surrounded him, all armed, some of them even on horses, and said, you become our leader. If you don't become our leader, we'll kill you, because we have staked our lives on this Gadar that we have started. Left with no other choice, Bahadur Shah announced himself to be the leader of the rebellion. And the sepoys moved out of Lal Killa to take over the city of Shahjahanabad. British rule disappeared from Shahjahanabad by the evening of the 11th of May, morning of the 12th of May. And this news that Delhi had fallen and the Mughal emperor was once again the ruler of Hindustan traveled across the Gangetic Plain from Delhi eastwards. And as this news of the fall of Delhi reached every single cantonment town on the Gangetic Plain, that cantonment town rose in rebellion, one by one. Till by the end of May 31st, when the rebellion actually arrived in Lucknow, British rule had disappeared from northern India. As one British officer was later to say, a survivor of the rebellion was to say, British rule had collapsed like a house of cards. So I'll pause at 31st May, Lucknow. The news has come, there is an uprising of the sepoys and of the common people of Lucknow against British rule. Lucknow is now openly declaring that Nawabi people of Lucknow are openly declaring that British rule, Firangi Raj has gone and the Nawabi rule has come back. Henry Lawrence, who was the resident of Lucknow, had anticipated this actually. Through the month of May, he had been writing that we will not be able to contain Lucknow. This uprising is to engulf Lucknow very soon, as a policy to save the English and the European people in Lucknow. He had taken them all into the residency. Those of you who've been to Lucknow, you know the site, the residency, and kept them there. The common people of Lucknow and the sepoys surrounded the residency on all sides, and they started a cannonade, a shelling of the residency that lasted for nearly 6 months, completely under siege, the Europeans were. Lawrence made a bid to come out of the residency and fight the rebels. He was defeated on the 30th of June in the first military victory that the rebels carry out against the British in a village outside Lucknow called Chinhat. Chinhat has now become a part of Lucknow. Those days it was a small village outside Lucknow. Once this victory was registered, the sepoys also decided that they would install a king in Lucknow. And they chose a son of Wajid Ali Shah, the Nawab, the king of Awadh, who had been the king of Lucknow, and Awadh, who had been exiled, deposed and exiled to Calcutta. His son, 11 years old, maybe 12, we don't know exactly. His name was Birjis Qadar. The sepoys carried out a coronation ceremony to announce Birjis Qadar to be the king of Awadh and of Lucknow. Birjis Qadar's mother was a lady called Hazrat Mahal. And because she was the mother, she became the power behind the throne. A 12-year-old boy naturally couldn't take any important decisions. So it was left to a woman, his mother, to carry out the responsibilities of a king. So this is how a relatively obscure woman, and I will explain why I say obscure woman, enters the pages of history, the stage of history, if you like, as a kind of a regent queen. We know very little about the early life of Hazrat Mahal. All that we know is that she was the daughter of an African slave employed by Wajid Ali Shah, a slave's daughter. Her father admitted her, probably because she was good looking, if not beautiful, into a school, a dancing and music school that Wajid Ali Shah had set up. It was called the Pari Khana, Pari as in fairy or angel. And every student of that school was given the title, given a name with Pari attached to it. And so Hazrat Mahal got another name. She was called Mahak Pari. And this is where she learned music, she learned how to dance. And she thereby had access to forms of entertainment, education that a slave's daughter would normally not have access to. It was here, through many performances of dance and music, that she caught the eye and the fancy of Wajid Ali Shah. She was obviously talented and beautiful enough to catch the king's eye. Wajid Ali Shah made her what in our jargon was known as a muta wife. Muta wife is a temporary wife for pleasure. Very soon, because of the relationship between the king and Mahakpari was pregnant. And when she gave birth to a son, Birjis Qadar, we have already met, Wajid Ali Shah officially elevated her from being a muta wife to be a member of his harem, and gave her the very grandiose title, a very grandiose title. The queens that Wajid Ali Shah thought were special, he called them Mahal. And the title he gave, a very long title, so I'll have to read it out to you, to Mahakpari was Nawab Iftikhar ul Nisa Begum Hazrat Mahal Shahiba. That's how she came to be known. Thus Hazrat Mahal or Begum Hazrat Mahal. We don't know her original name. Mahakpari is a name that is given to her in her educational institution, and then the king gives her this very elaborate title. But from around 1845-46, fortune stopped smiling on this young woman. Wajid Ali Shah, prompted by his mother, Wajid Ali Shah gave her talak and threw her out of the harem. So she lost the title of Begum and all the privileges that went with that title and being a member of the harem. She was no longer a queen. Then fortune stopped smiling at Wajid Ali Shah. In 1856, February 1856, the British annexed Awadh and deposed Wajid Ali Shah, and as I said, sent him on exile to Calcutta, where he came and lived in Mediapur, building a mini Lucknow there. This was a moment, Wajid Ali Shah's departure from Lucknow. He walked and then by palanquin came to Kanpur, from where he took a boat to Allahabad, from where he took a train to Calcutta. Was a moment of great emotional upheaval for the people of Lucknow, because Wajid Ali Shah was a very loved king in Lucknow. An entourage went with him to Lucknow, traveled. Many of his mahals, cooks, bird keepers, musicians, dancers, they all went with Wajid Ali Shah to come to Mediapur. Hazrat Mahal obviously was not a part of that entourage. She was left behind in Lucknow. And then within 1 year, of course, fortune, if you want to put it like that, begins to smile on her again. Her son is a king. And she regains the title of Begum. People again begin to call her Begum Hazrat Mahal. So there's a closing of a circle there, if you want to put it that way. And Hazrat Mahal is thus drawn into the rebellion of 1857, not just drawn into as any common participant. She is part of a rebellion of the people of Lucknow and Awadh, and she becomes a leader of the people as the Queen Regent, if you like. Wajida, Begum Hazrat Mahal, after the victory of at Chinad and the coronation of Birjis Qadar, begins to set up an administration. Now, often in the conventional books that we read about 1857, it is assumed that the year 1857, that rebellion was a mindless thing, it was just an orgy of violence, and the rebels really didn't know what they were trying to set up once they had thrown out the British and so on. This is not true, this is factually incorrect, and what Hazrat Mahal tried to do is an indication of how incorrect this picture that the British had painted about the rebellion of 1857 is. She decided to set up an administrative machinery. That administrative machinery had two parts to it. One was, how was this war to be conducted? She knew that she was at war. Her people were at war against the British. And that the British might be on the back foot now, they would be coming back to at least rescue the Europeans who were now captive under a siege in the Residency. She knew that this was inevitable. So how to stop, how to organize a resistance to the British army when it makes the attempt to come into Lucknow? One. Two, how to continue the siege, how to continue the cannonading, the shelling, etc., etc. All this required organization, food, ammunition, supply chains to get these to the soldiers. The population of Lucknow had to be fed, which meant, and this brings me to the second pillar of our administration, the civil part of the administration, how to collect revenue, how to spend that revenue, on what to spend that revenue. So she actually sat and formed two councils of administration. One was the Council for Civil Administration and was the Council of War. Look from where she has come. Compelled by circumstances, a slave's daughter, a dancer, a musician, a rejected wife, is now at the helm of affairs, conducting a full-scale war against one of the most powerful enemies that could be thought of in the 19th century anywhere in the world. And she continues this role. She continues this role even when Lucknow fails to resist the onslaught of the British Army under Lord Clive. And she moves out of Lucknow into the countryside of ours, continuing a guerrilla war. I say continuing because we have evidence, very strong evidence of how she was sending out orders, tactical moves, strategical maneuvers to carry out this guerrilla warfare. I don't have the time to go into the details of this, but she was actually giving very detailed orders about continuing this guerrilla war even after Lucknow had fallen. So she had actually emerged as a general. Even as a woman, she had emerged as a general. Let me shift the focus now to Jhansi, the home of Lakshmibai. The rebellion arrives there on the 5th of June, 5 or 6 days later after Lucknow. The soldiers, the sepoys mutiny. They kill all the white residents that were there in Jhansi. They go to Lakshmibai, who had locked herself in a house, appeal for her help. We don't know Lakshmibai's answer. But the sepoys sped away from Jhansi, much like the sepoys at Meerut had done. They rode away to Delhi, to join the war in Delhi. So now we have Lakshmibai in Jhansi, a good 50-55 white women men killed by the rebels. She has the task of maintaining law and order in Jhansi, the task of feeding the population in Jhansi. Fate hadn't quite prepared her for this. So who is Lakshmi Bai? The question then arises. Again, much like Hazrat Mahal, we don't know very much about her childhood, but we know a little more than we know about Hazrat Mahal. She was the daughter of an official in the Maratha administration. When the head of the Maratha administration in Pune, the Peshwa, was dethroned or moved from his office, he moved to North India. So his entourage also moved to North India. And one such person was Morapat Tambe, very close to Peshwa Bajirao II. And Tambe came to live in Varanasi. His wife was Bhagirathi Devi. Around 1829, some accounts 1829, some accounts 1831, they gave birth to a daughter who was called Manikarnika. The name suggests that she was born in Varanasi, Manikarnika. How she was educated, whether she was educated, we don't know. There are no accounts of her childhood and of her growing up. But her later life, what she did in her later life, gives us some ideas about her childhood and her education. Because what do we find in her later life? That she is an extraordinarily good horsewoman. She rode the horse better than most men did of her time. 2, she was extremely good at using the sword. 3, she was also known to be acquainted of the use of firearms, the rifle or the gun. So some of the male activities of that time, she had trained herself to acquire, and she was very good at it, good at them. She gets married when she is 15, 16 to a man much older than her, the king of Jhansi, and they fail to give birth to an heir. So before his death, when he was ailing, her husband Gangadhar Rao adopted a son from another branch of his family, and he died. The son was a baby. So Lakshmi Bai now had the responsibility of bringing up this boy and also looking after the administration of Jhansi. Gangadhar Rao died around 1852, 1853. The British annexed Jhansi in 1854. The logic of that annexation is there is no heir. We do not recognize an adopted heir. This was called by Dalhousie the doctrine of lapse. The line had lapsed, in other words. Now the Rani refused to accept, Lakshmi Bai refused to accept this logic. She kept on writing, appealing to Lord Dalhousie, pointing out the inconsistencies of this position. The British Lord Dalhousie and the British administration was in no mood to listen. So Lakshmi Bai had a kind of grouse, anger, if you like, against the British administration. And at this conjuncture, when she is still deciding what to do, she is enveloped by this rising in Jhansi. It's a very precarious situation for her. Why precarious? She has very little experience of administration. The same problem that Hazrat Mahal is facing. How to collect revenue, how to disburse that revenue, how to ensure food supply for the populace. She has no experience in all this. And bringing up the baby. And she also knows, this is critical, that she would be held responsible by the British for shedding the blood of the white population in Jhansi. Either they would say, you were directly responsible, you killed them, you were party to the killing, which they would do, in fact. That's what they did. And the second, she was aware that you didn't offer them protection. In the event, she was actually accused of being the first, of being the killer, of directly being the killer of the white population. This is why her situation is precarious. And she is writing between June and December, June and January, June 1857 and January 1858, she is writing letters, more than letters, I would say petitions and appeals to the British, saying, this is my situation. I am trying desperately to hold on to Jhansi so that Jhansi does not fall completely into the hands of a rebel administration. Please come and rescue Jhansi as soon as you can. I am ruling as your trustee. In your name, I'm carrying out the administration of Jhansi and waiting for your arrival. But on the British side, she is already one of the leading suspects of the rebellion. They have no trust in these letters that she is sending out. And thus, the beginning of 1858, from March 1858, from Pune, an army led by General Hugh Rose begins to come to the environments of Jhansi, to capture Jhansi, just like Lord Clyde's troops in November 1857 had moved from Calcutta to capture Lucknow. Jhansi falls, offers a stiff resistance, as did the people of Lucknow. The people of Jhansi offered a stiff resistance to Hugh Rose's troops, but Jhansi fell on the 2nd of April, 1858. But on the night of that, a very dramatic event happened. Through a breach in the wall of the Jhansi fort, Lakshmibai, with her young son strapped on her back, rode a horse with about 12 to 14 of very loyal supporters. And in the middle of the night, she rode through that breach in the wall into the countryside around Jhansi. The British really wanted to capture her and punish her, as they did Hazrat Mahal. Now both these women were canny enough to know that they were prime suspects and they escaped capture. We don't know how Hazrat Mahal moved out from Lucknow, but in the case of Lakshmibai, we do know. This is a very dramatic escape, on horseback with the baby on her back. And she rides up towards Kalpi, which is a military station just south of Allahabad, where she knows an army of rebels have gathered and she joins them. There's a battle in Kalpi in which the Rani actually participates on horseback. That battle is lost by the rebels. The Rani rides with her with the soldiers towards Gwalior, and just on the outskirts of Gwalior, in a place called Badli Ki Sarai, she meets her death fighting on horseback. The description of her death is very poignant. She had a very loyal horse, a grey-colored horse, which she had ridden for the better part of her life. And while she was fighting and she was moving on that horse, she came across a ditch, which the horse had to jump to go to the other side. Now the horse just hesitated for a moment or a minute before taking that leap. And at that moment, when the horse had stopped, a sniper bullet, we don't know who the shooter was, a sniper bullet felled Lakshmibai, the Rani of Jhansi, and she died on the battlefield fighting. What happens to Hazrat Mahal, if you go back again to Lucknow? She is directing the fight against the British, not actually fighting. Nobody saw Hazrat Mahal on a horseback fighting. She was most of the time on a palanquin directing operations as a modern general would do from the back of the battle rather than at the forefront of the battle. And it's a losing battle. The British are pushing her into a corner, and finally, through northeast Awadh, she escapes into the Terai of Nepal, and where she dies in utter poverty in 1878, 1877. The British offered her a pardon and a pension. She scoffed at it and she turned it down. Rather live in poverty than take a subsidy from somebody, a government, a sarkar that had dethroned my husband. So a slave's daughter ends her life as somebody who died in obscurity. We actually do not know how she died. The British just received a report that she was dead. Now we come to the afterlife of these two women. They are both dead, one in battle, one in obscurity and poverty in Nepal. Lakshmibai, as you know, was celebrated as a great martyr. And this celebration started with some Marathi writers, but more famously in a book called The Indian War of Independence by V.D. Savarkar, which is the book that first proclaims Lakshmibai as the great martyr for freedom. And interestingly, as the narrative of V.D. Savarkar proceeds, he stops calling Lakshmibai Lakshmibai, calls her just Lakshmi, to give her the status of a deity. But I'd be unfair on Savarkar if I don't mention also that in the same book, in a different chapter, he also wrote extensively about Hazrat Mahal, how brave she had been, how strategically she had thought, the plans that she had put into motion, the administrative skills that she had displayed, right? So, but he said, to quote Savarkar, she was very brave, very courageous, very intelligent, but she was not quite up there, I'm quoting that phrase, not quite up there with Lakshmibai. So Savarkar is setting up a calibration, if you like, a hierarchy of heroines of 1857, in which the highest pedestal is given to Lakshmibai, and with others, Hazrat Mahal is at the second or the third pedestal, but not quite at the top. And this is the tradition that Indian historians, irrespective of the color of their ideology, have continued. Now, Jawaharlal Nehru, who like Savarkar was not a trained historian, carries it forward. In the discovery of India, there is no mention of Hazrat Mahal, but there are 2 paragraphs extolling Rani of Jhansi as the great heroine and martyr of 1857. The Lakshmi Bai iconization continues. It was most famously expressed by a poem, a Hindi poem, a memorable Hindi poem by Subhadra Kumari Chauhan. जोर से लड़ी वो थी झांसी की रानी. The iconization has continued to such an extent that in 2007, in the 150 years celebration of the rebellion of 1857, in a joint session of the Indian Parliament, the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh presiding or sitting in the front row, not presiding, Shubha Mutkal actually sang, put to music and sang Subhadra Kumari Chauhan's song or poem with great applause. Nobody remembered Hazrat Mahal, that she had also fought. In her own way, she had fought. I want to leave you, as I said, by touching on this problem of remembering and forgetting. Why do we continue not just to remember, but to revere Lakshmi Bai? Rightly so. I'm not saying it's wrong to respect her, to revere her. Rightly so. But why don't we do the same thing from Hazrat Mahal, who is, in my view at least, equally deserving of the same respect and the same reverence? I would like to suggest that there are 2 reasons for this. One is the origins of these 2 individuals, 2 these remarkable women. One was a Brahmin upper caste. She was married into royalty and actually inherited the royal title Rani. The other was the daughter of a slave who lost her royal title, was rejected by her husband and regained it. But unlike Lakshmi Bai, she did not embrace a martyr's death. Lakshmi Bai embraced her martyr's death and thus elevated herself, her royal status, her caste status, to a completely different level to which Hazrat Mahal could not aspire. We carry these biases with us, however much we might think we are enlightened and we should not have such biases. But I think the more important moral of the story that I have been trying to present to all of you, is that both these women, with their lives taking on different trajectories, very different trajectories, martyrdom and obscurity, were empowered women in a male-dominated 19th century world. But they behaved as they thought under very unusual and difficult circumstances, as they thought a woman should behave and what a woman ought to do when faced with very trying circumstances, under great adversity, how they should behave. And that's how they responded. They responded to the challenges that they faced in their own lives and in their own times. I leave you with one small, poignant last thought. Both of them had children. Both of them had sons. Which they did. Neither of them abandoned their sons. Lakshmibai escaped with her son on her back. Birjis Kadar went with his mother into Lucknow. When his mother died in Lucknow, Birjis Kadar came to India. The British offered him again a pension, which he turned down following his mother. He came to Calcutta, where he thought his father's relatives would offer him some protection, give him some support. He died in Calcutta out of very bad food poisoning. There is some suspicion that that food poisoning might not have been natural. Somebody may have poisoned him, but we don't know. I'm not going into that line of speculation. The story of Lakshmibai's son is even sadder, in a sense. The martyr's son. He was seen in the 1870s, now a grown-up young man, wandering around Jhansi, trying to seek out his mother's history, but in poverty, and appealing through British officers in Jhansi for some kind of financial support so that he could continue to live. And the British gave him a pension of 150 rupees per annum. That's how the story of Lakshmibai and Hazrat Mahal end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very insightful and very interesting journey into history, and also for introducing us into these concepts of silence, absence, invisibility, all that women face and have to overcome. And lastly, just a line, sir said he was not well chosen because he is not the most appropriate person to speak at this forum. I feel by this paper that he's presented to us, the positive note that he has given all of us women to overcome a whole lot of challenges, I think he was the fittest person to be here, and a round of applause for that. And on that note, I think we break for tea and reassemble after tea by 12 o'clock. Thank you.